This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Ethan.
And good morning, Robert. Man,
morning.
is this like 3 in a row for guests on the podcast?
Yeah, and I think our next one's a guest as well.
Wow, we're becoming popular.
Well, we're free.
Yeah.
that helps.
Yeah. All right. So, Robert, tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're here.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan and Kelly. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
I'm Robert Salmon. I'm the president of ELi-Technology. We've been a partner with Crisis Go for a couple of years, I guess, now,
Yep.
working together. And our company is focused on location intelligence and helping you find your staff and students at the schools more accurately, more precisely.
Yes, that seems to be an issue, right? Is where's the emergency? Where are my people? How do I find them? How do I account for them? How do we get that information? How do we share that information with law enforcement, the fire service, and those? So,
Yeah.
give us a little insight. As no trade secrets, but tell us how you do that.
Yeah, well, it's been a long-standing issue in the industry, in 911 and in emergency services. You know, over the last several years, there's been a real boom of school safety application providers. There's been a real surge in the number of companies doing it. Some have been successful. I think there will be some consolidation in the market eventually. You guys have certainly emerged as one of the leaders. The challenge has been the old 911 world, landlines, etc., are not able to deliver dynamic location. So in the old days, it was a static or fixed landline. You called 911 and they cross-referenced your number into a database, found your address, and that's where they sent the ambulance, police, and fire. Fast forward to modern times where people are on cell phones or laptops making phone calls, and they move all over the place all the time. The question became, how do we accurately find those people? There's been many incidences, unfortunately, of people who are no longer with us as a result of not being able to be found. In some cases, the rescue was only a few meters away. So it's tragic. A lot has changed in the United States, in particular with legislation. Things like Alyssa's Law, things like that are gaining momentum and gradually being signed into law state by state that require businesses to provide or guarantee that location is transmitted to 911. The general public has the misconception that if you call 911 from your cell phone, they magically know where you are. It's not like Star Trek. They're not going to beam you up, and they don't know precisely where you are. GPS works well outdoors. They can usually find you if you're in a clear outdoor space. If you're in an urban environment, high-rise buildings, things like that, you might get a search area on the map that is a large circle. It could be 100 meters in diameter, 150 meters in diameter. And in a city, that could encompass 4 or 5 buildings easily. Then you add on top the complexity of altitude, or which floor are you on. GPS doesn't have a Z coordinate. It has X and Y only. That raises another issue. Law enforcement or 911 services, they don't understand GPS. If you try to send a fire truck to 32 degrees north, 64 degrees west, they won't know how to get there. Generally speaking, they could probably find it on their GPS on their truck or whatever, but their whole training and conditioning is to go to 123 Anywhere Street, a specific address, hopefully with a floor number. So what our system does, what our technology does, is it provides two things. One is a very precise indoor location. So instead of seeing a bird's eye view with a bunch of rooftops, we peel the roof off and you can actually see the floor plan of the building and you can see the dot precisely which room the person is in who triggered the call. That's one. Two, we provide a human readable dispatchable address for that person. So in addition to the map and the precise dot, 911 or the PSAP will receive a human readable dispatchable address for that person, including the floor level and the room number. And that's a game changer. Nobody else does that.
It's one thing to put it on a map. It's a different thing to make sure that the right people have that information, right? There's this idea that when you press the button, everyone's going to come save you. They're going to know exactly where you're at and who's in trouble. When we start talking about panic buttons and so forth, we're talking about a response, right? And how we respond, how we get the information to the right people is important. And how we share that information is important. But it's also important for the receivers of that information to be able to decipher it very quickly, right? To understand what it means. And when we start combining partners like Eli and Atlas with our mapping partners like CRG and others, then we take the most up-to-date maps, the most interactive, intelligent maps, and we can provide an almost real-time snapshot of what is occurring. And when we start looking at a response from a school's perspective, first of all, it's not instantaneous. The average response time on a good day is about 3 to 5 minutes. And when you have violence of any form happening, 3 to 5 minutes is a long time. So we need to make sure that they understand what is happening, where it's happening at, and so forth. Law enforcement and the fire services and the emergency medical people are going to come in and start trying to solve the problem as they know it. From a response perspective, those first 3, 4, 5 officers that walk through the door aren't looking at a map. So they need somebody to relay that information to them. So they need somebody to direct it. Now, that could be at the PSAP. That could be if they're training, in Kelly's humble opinion, appropriately, they're sending the first 4 or 5 officers through the door to help solve that problem. But that 5th, 6th, 7th on scene, they should pause. You have enough resources on the inside, they should pause, and then they should start directing that scene. And they're the ones that are going to pull up that map, and they're the ones that are going to be able to decipher that data. If you have somebody in the PSAP looking at it, that's great too, because then they can start directing. You need to go to the left and, to the west wing and start looking for room 207, right? When we start working through that process and providing that information to them, what is the information that they're seeing? Are they seeing all of the people that press the button? Are they seeing all of the students? Are they seeing all of your staff? How do they decipher what's the problem child and what's the in need child?
That usually is a function of the application that's in use. So let's take Crisis Go as an example. Most applications have a panic button of some sort, or they have a check-in system. I'm okay, or I need help. Students will press a button. Teachers may press a button. It ranges in the industry from fixed panic buttons on the wall to smart cards with lanyards, panic buttons that you carry like a key fob style, all the way up to an app on a phone. The static buttons do have some limitations in that they're not very contextual. They're a switch on off. That's it. That's the only information they provide. Smart cards and panic buttons can travel with you, which means that their location can be more contextual and more up to date. And of course, the Cadillac would be a cell phone or an app on a phone where you can have much richer and more valuable information, more timely, usually relayed back to a command center or to whoever needs it.
Mm-hmm.
When the button is pressed on these applications, could be a teacher, could be a student, for example, there's a protocol that happens, and that's where our stuff takes over. So the first thing that we do is do a scan of the environment. Our technology works off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, both. They're complementary as far as we're concerned. And we'll do a scan of the environment and build a package, send it back to our servers, host it in the AWS cloud. We'll analyze the package, and then we'll send the location information back to whomever needs it, right? So if that is Crisis Go wants to display this information in your iResponse module, we'll send it there. That's up to you. You may wish to relay that information to a PSAP through 911. When it goes to 911, there's some coordination that has to happen between the voice call and the data, the map, for example. It's been done, it's been tested, and it's not that difficult. You have the right partners involved. It's actually fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
So we send 911 a hyperlink. So when a PSAP operator gets a 911 call on their screen, it pops up just like they're used to seeing, and there's usually a link indicating that there's more information available about this call or something to that effect. And the PSAP operator can click on the link. When they click on the link, up comes the map with the dot of where the person is, and also their dispatchable address, including a floor number and the typical street address. Having that floor number has been a little bit of a holy grail for people to find accurately and reliably.
Mm-hmm.
And coordinating that with a dispatchable address and a map all in one package so that the PSAP operator has everything all on the screen in one easy window to see. Now, that hyperlink, we or Crisis Go can send that anywhere. If you subsequently wanted to send that to parents or to someone that didn't have your app, if you want to broadcast it, you can do that. It's just a hyperlink.
Probably not going to send an active incident hyperlink to a parent, right? Because you want to control that information and what they want.
No, that's more in the reunification phase, maybe.
Yeah. Here's what happens in an event. In the vast majority of the United States and almost any other country as well, but since we're here in the United States, that's what we're going to deal with. The vast majority of our law enforcement agencies, there are very few agencies in the United States that are large enough to handle an incident of this magnitude by themselves. Most areas have mutual aid agreements and or understandings that if I call for help in this situation, you're going to come. You also get those that are self-dispatched. They hear about it and they say, oh, they're going to need some help, so I'm on my way. What that means is I might call the sheriff's department PSAP, but I get 3 or 4, maybe 10 different agencies that show up. So when you have or create a hyperlink that has critical data on it that is discernible, you can look at it and you can understand what's happening, then we solve the biggest problem with interoperability. And that is, the interoperability movement started after 911, 9/11, and then was re-energized after Katrina. And when people were working off all these different frequencies and they wanted everyone to be able to talk to each other, which is, conceptually, it's a great idea until you have 200 people from 20 different agencies trying to talk to each other on the same frequency. It just doesn't work. Trust me, I've been there.
Yeah.
So with technology now, and with the critical information of Ethan, what do people need to know? You should be spitting this off, right? You should expect this question every time.
What's going on, and what do you need me to do?
That's right. That's same with your first responders. What's happening, and what do you want me to do? And oftentimes, we don't really know what's happening. We have a good idea, and what you want me to do is come in and solve your problem. And the first question that law enforcement has, where is it? Where's the problem? We'll figure it out once we get there, but where is it? The interoperability piece, using technology like what we have partnered with Crisis Go, Eli, and like CRG, is combining those technologies. We can give you almost a real-time snapshot of what's happening. And it doesn't require a bunch of communications. It's a quick picture is worth 1,000 words, and it's a map with a bunch of dots. People understand what the dots are and what they're doing. And so you're getting the right information to the people who need it as quickly as possible. When we generally talk about communicating, people automatically think, I have to tell you something or I have to speak with you. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just better to show them a map with the data placed on it. Video cameras, access control points, locked doors, unlocked doors. I don't think we're there yet, but we might be able at some time in the near future isolate the shooter.
Yeah.
For me, it's going to take a combination of different technologies and to show with AI maybe saying, hey, this one dot here on your map is an anomaly. He's going against the flow. He's moving in a pattern that's different than everyone else. He's moving, everyone else is not. Who knows how we're going to do that? But I think that's something that we're going to get in the near future. But understanding that without speaking a word is gold. And I'll tell you that as an incident commander, when you're sitting there trying to figure out the problem and trying to wrap your hands around that problem, and other incident commanders will understand my pain here, because right in the middle of it, somebody's going to come up who has your boss or my boss's boss or a governor, or somebody's going to come in and say, hey, tell me what's happening. And you have to sit down and turn around with a very disgusted look on my face. Are you kidding me right now? And tell them what it is, as opposed to pointing up to the map on the big screen and saying, there it is. If you have any questions, talk to my assistant here.
There's been a lot of new technology emerge over the last three years or so. Technology like CRG, their maps are excellent. Mike Rogers, the CEO, recently talked in social media about the safety gap. The challenge, or what he was speaking of, is they have these great maps. The challenge is getting them into the hands of the people that need them when they need them. That's a challenge. We have Zero Eyes. It's a great technology.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen it demoed or tried it.
Yeah, we're partners with them. We partner with them.
So it's a gun detection technology with video, and it is amazingly fast. If somebody pulls out a gun, it knows in less than a second that it's a gun, and after about 1 second, they know what kind of gun.
Right.
So and our location stuff, etc. So you have all of this new technology that's come out in the last 3 years, and what we're starting to see now is some consolidation, where everybody's got these islands of great ideas, and we're just at the beginning of consolidating that into something that the people who really need it the most can consume easily.
Yep.
There's all kinds of different standards, unfortunately.
That's right.
911, the business or the industry of 911 has been stuck in analysis paralysis for years. it's not that difficult.
Yep.
There are fundamental challenges in the design. It was designed to work with old stuff, and they're struggling to make it work with the new stuff. But a lot of what's there foundationally in the technology, like the routing technology that's built into figuring out where to send a 911 call, works perfectly well if you give it the right address.
Yep.
The challenge, you don't have, so in other words, you don't have to re-engineer the whole 911 routing engine.
Mm-hmm.
It will go to the right PSAP if you give it the correct street address.
That's right.
So that's what we do.
Yeah.
We make sure that we can resolve a mobile user to a dispatchable address.
Yeah.
That is the only piece that really needs to change. Once you feed that into the existing system, that routing stuff works quite well.
Yeah. And we've been doing that for quite a while as well, is routing. And so when we put in a system in a school, because you could have a school district with 3 different PSAPs, right?
Yeah.
And you could have a school that their cellular service is right next to them, but the cellular service that connects to the PSAP connects to the wrong PSAP. We've been identifying the correct PSAP and routing it regardless. When you're in this area, this is where it goes to. And the beauty of that is, even if you mistakenly go to the wrong PSAP, they can quickly transfer it. That's pretty common, right? But you wanted to get it there the first time, and you don't want any confusion. The less transfers you have, the less confusion you're going to encounter. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And bringing the partners together, I think one of the issues that I see in the industry is finding the right partners. Not just a partner, but finding the right partners. And
good partners are hard to find.
That they are. If you have partners that really are worried or concerned about your safety, then you'll find the right ones. And I think that the best partners, I think Eli has been there for us. CRG's been there. Zero Eyes has been a good partner, because we all bring different value to increase the value of the total package, right? And
exactly.
And I think that's where,
when you talk to the founders of these companies like Crisis Go and CRG and Eli, Peter Woodford is our founder.
Mm-hmm.
These founders, Frank Rogers and Mike Rogers at CRG, et cetera, and Jim at Crisis Go, these guys are motivated by saving lives and making a difference. They're not in this to make a ton of money. That's their mission. That is their motivation. And that's where their core values are. And when you get together with a group of folks who have the same core values, like Crisis Go, CRG, and Eli, great stuff can happen. We're working very closely with Crisis Go and with CRG. And we're at the beginning of making a substantial difference. We've each evolved our own products. They're fairly mature now. We've been doing it for several years. And now we're, for the first time, starting to bring them together into a package that is pretty compelling and pretty valuable.
Yeah, I agree. There's all this, I'll call it chatter, about standardizing. From a philosophical level, people want to standardize. But as soon as you start standardizing and saying, hey, you got to do it this way because that's the standard, there is so much pushback saying, wait, that's not what we need. That's not what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Well, either it's standardized or it's not. I get the flexibility, but we do have to understand that there has to be, at least at a high level, a standardized process. And here's where I will say the critical mass comes in for standardization is setting politics aside, is the standardization for those who are going to help you. So when you press the button and I use the county that I work for, Southern California, as an example. We had 20 different school districts with 108 different buildings. Each one of those buildings wanted to do it their own way. Each district wanted to do it their own way. But there is 5 primary law enforcement and emergency response agencies. So if you're going to start talking standardization, start standardizing as much as you can to help those who are coming to help you understand what's happening to you. Don't make them try to figure it out, because if everything is different at every school or every district, then we're going to have issues with trying to figure out what's the status. Are you in a lockdown? Are you in a secure? What does that mean? Hard lockdown versus a soft lockdown, whatever. Make it standard, at least for what it is that you're asking for help for.
One of the new areas that we're involved in is with TAC, which is the civilian version of ATAC, the Team Awareness Kit developed by the U.S. military many years ago, was used very successfully in the military for exactly that stuff. Where are you and how are you? We don't want to have instances of friendly fire or accidentally blowing one of our own teammates up, etc.
Right.
Also, strategically, from a command and control perspective, and even peer-to-peer with small teams, the intelligence, location intelligence that software yields is really incredible. So I think it was 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, they released a civilian version. And law enforcement has been picking that up more and more. I believe it does have the momentum to become the de facto standard. Not everybody has it yet. Not every law enforcement agency has it, but it's emerging as a standard. It's a very, very good at what it does, and it's free. The U.S. government has made it free.
Right.
You still have to own a server or rent a server and put it on top of that, but the cost is very low, relatively speaking. When law enforcement shows up at an emergency, there's an increasing probability that they're going to be using TAC. And we saw this, and we wanted to get our location information into TAC. TAC had the same problem as an application that Crisis Go had before Eli came along, and that was your position information was restricted to GPS, which has limitations. It works great outside, but, shooters inside the building, students are inside the building. Where are they? Well, we're not sure. So we broke through that limitation with TAC, just like we did in your app and others. Up until our plugin was finished, you could see soldiers, operators moving in TAC, and they would surround a building and enter the building, and they would all disappear. No one knew where they were anymore. And I mean, I don't really need to explain what the downside of that is. We did the same thing in TAC. We peeled the roof off. We overlaid a floor plan, like a CRG floor plan, and now everybody can see where everybody is all the time. Indoors or out, it doesn't matter.
Right. Second
Thing is, because we work with partners like yourselves, we have the ability to share that information if you allow or you give permission with TAC. So that means application providers like yourselves tick the box, and in an emergency, we can share that information with TAC. And that means when the police arrive, they're going to be able to leverage your location information of your subscribers, your students and teachers. They'll see that. So in addition to their peers, all their teammates arriving at a scene, they're also going to be able to see a map of the school in TAC and where all the students are, all in one place.
So how do we differentiate between a teacher, a student, and emergency personnel?
Colors. Yeah. Usually law enforcement is blue force, and students and teachers would be yellow or whatever color you want to designate. That's up to you. They're easily distinguishable, and there are some standards within TAC usually.
you and I had a conversation a week or so ago about this, and it's when I was in law enforcement, as I mentioned in our conversation, it was just coming to the surface in the civilian law enforcement side of things. I want to say it was Los Angeles Sheriff's Office was the first incident that I was aware of that they used it. I think it was at maybe the Rose Bowl parade or something. And we've been talking about response more than prevention, more than just situational awareness, right? But when you start sharing information of in the school environment, you have a large event, you have a football game, a prom. In years past, we had several incidences of shootings at proms and graduation, theatrical events, and so forth. If you have your security correct in there and you're doing everything correctly, you're also monitoring the event in real time, what's happening, and you don't necessarily have to activate all of the law enforcement entities, but you can still share the map. You can still share what's going on. So if something does tick off, then you're aware of the situation. You know what kind of event it is. You know where it's at. You should have already had what we call in law enforcement and so forth, the initial attack or the initial attack plan or the initial response plan, depending on politics. But you have your plan already in place. If something happens, this is what we're going to do. And you can monitor that relatively easy without being intrusive to the event. That's something that is intriguing to me, because when we start working from left of bang and you start trying to prevent, mitigate, and prepare for, this forces you and allows you to do all of that so that if something happens, you've already got a plan. You've already know what you're going to do, and that it reduces that reactionary gap significantly. Now, when you talk about standardization and TAC moving forward, I have a friend in the state of California who works for the Office of Emergency Services. They're in the process of trying to standardize what they're calling a single picture. What does it look like during an emergency? And through the conversation I had with him over the weekend, it was understand that you guys are, with everything you're telling me, you're talking about response. But in order to have a response, you have to have an event. Who initiates that event, right? Whether it's a fire, because they're using TAC fairly extensively, more by fire than law enforcement in California, search and rescue to track their resources and so forth. The need to start tracking at the beginning of an event prior to, in the planning and execution of the plan for an event, whether it's a football game, whatever. And some of these football games at some of these schools are significant because they have 10,000 people at them, right? Especially some of the larger high schools. And when you start talking the large universities in Southern California or California in general, you're talking 50, 60,000, right? If not 100,000 in some of them. But monitoring your resources during an event and having that understanding that that's the most likely place that you're going to have something tick off. So understand the initiators. When you start developing your response plan, understand who's going to be initiating the call.
That's important.
So I think there's going to be big strides. I agree with you. I think there's going to be, but we're going to see how it all plays out. We're going to work through that.
Yeah, it's evolving, right? It's a new industry still, and there's going to be some consolidation, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for the right types of partnerships.
Yeah.
One of the first pilots that we did, you talked about stadiums and football and stuff like that. One of the first pilots we did was at Panther Stadium in North Carolina. It's an NFL stadium. It has around 74,000 seats. We were able to get into the stadium and use it for a couple of days. And they had, I think, around 2,500 access points, Wi-Fi access points or something like that. So we mapped them all out. And we were able to locate a cell phone within a 3x3 seat range 98% of the time. And that's cool and all that, but, translate that to a practical application. So we talk about at the beginning of the response is what you just tweak this. Mm-hmm. One of the things I use in my presentations is a fisheye camera picture from the top rim of Panther Stadium when it's full. Mm-hmm. And it is overwhelming when you look at that number of people from that angle and that view. Imagine you're the guy pulling the gurney from the ambulance and you know that somebody down there is having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. Traditional 911, they may or may not get the right information. To the left of Bang, there are, I think, 7 different street entrances to that stadium. So if you're the ambulance driver and all you know is that somebody at the stadium's had a heart attack, which entrance are you going to go in?
Right.
The street address of the stadium is whatever it is, 123 Anywhere Street. If you go in the wrong entrance, it will take you an extra 5 or 10 minutes to pull the gurney around to the other side. And if it's a heart attack, the guy will not be alive when you get. If we send the map with the precise location within a 3x3 seat range to the PSAP, the ambulance drivers have that within seconds. Mm-hmm. And they can plan their route accordingly. So that's a great example of how we kind of move a bit to the left of Bang and get that information into the hands of the people that need it so they can make decisions before they even arrive.
That's exactly right. And that's when you look at that pre-planning, we're going to have this capability. We have an emergency here, emergency there. When we start talking about the pre-planning of the events, then we can start pre-staging assets, response people, and saying, okay, from this area, this is the entrance. You could start identifying all of that. What I was going to say was that the correct street address for that stadium was probably 123 Panther Avenue. The idea of being able to pinpoint that is absolutely correct, right? And especially if you're in a stadium and your security staff, your ushers have the ability to go in there and press a button and, a staff assist button or what have you, right? And now they know where that is needed, because you're right. If you go to a dispatched street address and it's not the right place, it's going to take you 2 or 3 minutes to figure out that you're at the wrong place, much less the time that it takes you to go around to the correct place. But I will say probably in an actual football day scenario, they probably have people that are staged around in zones that are responsible for everything that happens within that zone. But that would be part of your plan. And you would understand if medic team 1 called for an ambulance, you would have a better idea. But that's, again, that's the beauty of having all of this preset for you, right? And when you're talking, 74,000 people, trying to find the problem is very difficult. Trying to get help to that, because your first point of contact for an emergency in a large event like that is generally somebody who's not real adept at handling crisis.
Yeah.
Right? They're security guards, they're ushers, they're vendors for, concessions, or the person sitting next to the incident, right? You have a heart attack. It's the person that said, "Hey, you okay, mister?" Yeah. Right. This is why panic buttons and staff assist buttons are critical, is because you need the ability to communicate that you need help and where it's at. Obviously, it's better if you can say what kind of help you need, where you're at. It's precisely, I'm in section whatever. But if you press that button and you have the access points. I forget the number of access points that they had at the Super Bowl. It was this last one when it was at Las Vegas Raider Stadium. I want to say like 10,000 access points. It was huge. It was huge because they didn't want people to have any issues.
Yeah. And it multiplies into cellular as well. They'll have a lot of cellular extra radios. And for us, each Wi-Fi access point could have multiple DSIDs on it. And not to geek out too much for your audience, but a regular access point could easily have 5 or 10 BSIDs. So you multiply the number of physical access points by 5 or 10, and that's the number of records that we're dealing with for that event. So when we do a Wi-Fi scan and look for that unique identifier, we have to then cross-reference it to an address or to a dispatchable address or to a seat or section and all that stuff. But it's not that different than the way 911 used to work. It's a little different. There's some radio stuff and some Bluetooth stuff that we do and some trilateration and all that type of stuff. I'm not going to tell you all the secret sauce, but we're able to get it down under 9 feet now. So we can actually, not only can we tell you what room you're in or what section you're in, we can tell you whether you're in the northeast corner of the boardroom or the southeast corner of the boardroom, and we can show you that on a map.
Like we've been saying, that's important data. Working through that is going to be a good exercise for people, is to understand what capabilities you have, what you don't have, and what you need. And really, when you look at part of the problems that and I'm surprised people haven't called me to tell me to shut up on this yet, but they will.
Are the phone lines open, Ethan?
The phone lines are open. Is part of the shortcomings. I totally understand that Alyssa's law and the need for that, but part of the shortcomings is they're advocating for panic buttons, which are designed, their use is for response. Law enforcement's mission is response. So when we talk to law enforcement, it's about response. And we're trying to also advocate for stuff on the left side, the prevention, the mitigation, the preparedness side of bang. And how do we use those tools to help prevent? And I think that's one of the big gaps that we have right now, and or misunderstandings. I just did a blog. Did we do a podcast on that one as well? Identifying the gap between law enforcement and the schools.
I'm pretty sure we have.
Yeah, I think we did.
It was a little while ago.
But there's a gap because there's a misunderstanding of what the expectations are of each side. And trying to shorten that gap a little bit or fill that gap up is critical. But there is a time when you need a panic button because your prevention and mitigation and preparedness have all run their course, right? And you still have an event. This was a complete anomaly, complete surprise. Whoever is having the emergency or initiating the emergency is something that wasn't on your radar. You can't expect to know everything. You can't expect to prevent everything. We want to, but we need those panic buttons and we need that information. And trying to work through that is one of the challenges that we're going to continue to have for some time.
Again, focusing to the left of bang, which seems where you're at right now, is behavioral analysis using the technology that exists already at the schools, not buying new stuff, just leveraging what they have with Wi-Fi, for example. Kelly, you and I have talked in the past about behavioral analytics or AI, whatever sticker you want to put on it. There are patterns that emerge that would be deemed normal behavior. So on a day-to-day, weekly basis, there are a set number of people and devices that pass through the Wi-Fi field. And there may be on a daily or weekly basis some exceptions. right? That is something that we can analyze and use to predict or warn of events before they happen. It's not a perfect science, right? We still have to wrestle with the fact that, we talk all the time about trying to ID the shooter. And there's things we have to wrestle with. One, in approximately, I think it's 15 to 20%, something like that, the shooter is a student of the school.
Mm-hmm.
And that means this, all the things we do to delineate that person or filter goes out the window.
Right.
They have the app, or they have the panic button, or whatever, or they're normally present in the school passing through the Wi-Fi. Things like that make it more challenging. The shooter may or may not have a cell phone. Some of them record it and want to broadcast it or live stream it. Some have done that. Others don't have a cell phone at all because they don't want to be they want to run the risk of being tracked. There's a ways to go on that side of it where you can actually predict or warn. But I think there are some things that are within reach that are not science fiction that could be done fairly easily to help start warning people. I would really like to be able to put the position of the shooter intact so that when the police arrive, they have a rough idea of where that person is. That could make a fundamental difference, and it could have saved many first responders' lives. We may not be able to pinpoint it yet precisely, but we can give them a map today of where all the good guys are. And we can also say, these 5 or 6 dots that are black, we don't know who they are, but there's somebody there. And you can see all the good guys. Your team's in blue, staff and students are all in green. And then you have these 5 or 6 black dots. We're not sure who they are. They don't normally belong here. Mm-hmm. So you may want to pay attention to those.
That just gets me thinking of you have AI stuff that can detect guns. Could you just have some little, I mean, Kelly and I have kind of touched this a little bit, but you could have some little thing that shoots a little sticky thing and just sticks a little Wi-Fi component onto the shooter, right? And that would track him. Is that totally out of the realm of possibility? I mean,
it's
I feel like you could,
but
I think that's a bit Hollywood at the moment.
But it's possible.
I think someone could do it.
I mean, if you put a little RFI or whatever.
Yeah, just get a little thing that's got a little sticky component to it,
or
whatever.
From a technology perspective, yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
But here's if you're going to shoot something, right?
Yeah,
that's eliminate it. Don't just track it.
Well, yeah, then there's that component to it.
But the issue that I think we're going to come in is we all have a critical piece of the puzzle.
Mm.
And what it's going to end up doing is combining everyone's piece to show what the picture is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But in the meantime, pointing people in the right direction is better than having them try to figure it out in the time of crisis. So what I mean by that, and using Robert's example, is if you know where the good guys are and where the bad guys are, cops are, the students and the teachers are, the fire guys are, but I can't explain these 5. Well, that's a place I want to go. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'll go in that direction because it's like our check-ins. What I'm trying to do when we do a check-in is not only identify those who need help, but eliminate all of those people who don't need help as an emergency manager, right? So in this instance, what I'm trying to do is narrow down my focus by saying all of these other green and blue dots are good. These 5 are unknowns. So I need to focus my attention on the unknowns. Right. So, but I think when you start saying gun detection, we can start at some point. We should be able to start saying, okay, here's our guy. We're going to follow our guy, and now we can start tracking our guy video it with camera and so forth. And now we're tracking cameras with Wi-Fi, and our panic buttons are all going off in the same area, and we're following that dot and combining
Yeah.
that information.
Yeah,
And
you can develop a picture. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So I think that's probably where we're headed. To me, it sounds easy, but I don't have to do that.
Yeah,
with,
I mean, we can
O's and
do that with
ones.
cameras now. I know of some things that you can track. I'm trying to think if it's a real time thing, or if it was just an evidence type thing after the fact. But there's definitely some types of cameras and AI stuff components to it where you can like track like the guy's wearing a red shirt and blue jeans or something. Then you highlight that, and then you can track that across all the cameras within your ecosystem. I just can't remember if it was
Most of that is
after the fact.
Is you're searching for somebody.
Yeah, I can't
Right.
remember if it was after the fact or real times, but like if you made that real time,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be pretty sweet.
They're working on that part of it, I think. Robert, anything else you want to bring up before we?
No, I think I'm good, Kelly. Enjoyed it. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to circle back and touch base and talk about the industry and where it's at, things like that. I am excited about the partnerships. I am excited, I think, about consolidation and us working together with the likes of Crisis Go and CRG.
Mm-hmm.
And I think integration and working more closely together is going to get that information into the hands of the people that really need it the most in a timely basis.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I know it was a big bother for you to call us from the tropics with the tropical breeze blowing through your banana trees.
There's no sand between my toes, unfortunately. It's been mostly work here.
Understood.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.